Reading from the Acts. Paul reached also Derbe and Lystra, where there was a disciple named Timothy, the only son of a Jewish woman who was a believer, but his father was a Greek. The brothers in Lystra and Iconium spoke highly of him, and Paul wanted him to come along with him. On account of the Jews of that region, Paul had him circumcised, for they all knew that his father was a Greek. As they traveled from city to city, they handed on to the people for observation the decisions reached by the apostles and the presbyterers in Jerusalem. Day after day, the churches grew stronger in faith and increased in number. They traveled through the Phrygian and Galatian territory because they had been prevented by the Holy Spirit from preaching the message in the province of Asia. When they came to Mysia, they tried to go on into Bithynia, but the Spirit of Jesus did not allow them. So they crossed through Mysia and came down to Troas. During the night, Paul had a vision. A Macedonian stood before him and implored him with these words, "Come over to Macedonia and help us." When he had seen the vision, we sought passage to Macedonia at once, concluding that God had called us to proclaim the good news to them. The word of the Lord. The responsorial psalm, let all the earth cry out to God with joy. Sing joyfully to the Lord, all you lands. Serve the Lord with gladness. Come before him with joyful song. Let all the earth cry out to God with joy. Know that the Lord is God. He made us. His we are, his people, the flock he tends. Let all the earth cry out to God with joy. The Lord is good. His kindness endures forever, and his faithfulness to all generations. Let all the earth cry out to God with joy.
Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia.
I call you my friends, says the Lord, for I have made known to you all that the Father has told me.
Alleluia, alleluia, alleluia.
The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John.
Glory to you, Lord.
Jesus said to his disciples, "This is my commandment. Love one another as I love you. No one has greater love than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends. You are my friends if you do what I command you. I no longer call you slaves, because a slave does not know what his master is doing. I have called you friends, because I have told you everything I have heard from my Father. It was not you who chose me, but I chose you, and appointed you to go and bear fruit that will remain, so that whatever you ask the Father in my name, he may give you. This I command you, love one another." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. One of the psalms that I remember from my grade school days, and I'm sure many of you remember also, is one that went on, "And they'll know we are Christians by our love, by our love. And they'll know we are Christians by our love." Then it talks about working together and working side by side and supporting one another. The reality of our Christian faith can be summarized in both a perspective of a law and of witness and action in that one word, love. The fact is, no matter what is going on in the world, no matter how any one of us might feel at any time, no matter what divisions there are among us, what must characterize us is our love. That love is very practical and evident. Jesus himself shows us to the nth degree what that love means, and he tells us about that in the gospel today. We lay down our lives for our friends. We don't choose our friends. The Lord has chosen our friends. Our friends are those who are friends of the Lord. Sometimes we might be personalities that disagree in a great deal from each other and from our perspective and our way of approaching things. We see that at work in the life of the church right from the very beginning. Because of the feast of St. Matthias, we didn't hear the debate that went on at that first council of the church from Acts 15. There were contentious discussions. The summary of it was like many a modern committee meeting, and there was a great discussion that followed. Well, not just great discussion, but great emotion. There were three basic camps. There were those who, from the camp of the Pharisees, that were kind of supported by James, that said, wait a minute, we've got to cover the whole law and put it into practice, and so the Gentiles have to do that too. Then there was the camp of St. Paul saying, wait a minute, we're coming among the Gentiles and they're receiving Christ, and they're doing that without any training in the law. We don't really need to impose anything on them. And then Peter, whose job is to keep the church one, is in the center, where he invites people to realize, yes, we do have to be in continuity with the way things have been and the way things were under Judaism, but we also have to be open that the Holy Spirit is doing something. Peter himself had some experiences where the Lord taught him that. Don't call unclean what I say is clean. The reality is the church came to unity in something that could have been great division, and that is the example. I love in that short letter just how simply put that is. Some of our number, they don't even name who they are, but everybody knows who they are the ones who came to stir up trouble. So they identify those who have an attitude of divisiveness. But they said they went without our direction and they did their own thing. Now we're going to speak with one accord. The fact that that letter says, the Holy Spirit we have decided. We have one accord. And then the way they send along Paul and Barnabas, our beloved Paul and Barnabas. Paul and Barnabas are two rather contentious characters as you read the Acts of the Apostles, Paul especially. Barnabas is an encourager. He keeps trying to draw things together. And he's the one who found Paul back at home at Tarsus and brought him to Antioch to help the people there. But the reality is that as time goes on, we'll see he and Paul, Barnabas and Paul have some disagreements and kind of separate from each other. But the reality is these volatile characters that were there right at the start found a way to love one another that comes from putting God first and being willing to sacrifice. Sometimes love for us means setting aside our own way of thinking for the sake of the common good. I'm sure that many of you are aware of all the different discussions that are going on with regard to how to approach re-entry into the world with the coronavirus. Some are saying, don't tread on my freedom. Others are saying, you must do this or you'll be arrested. Others are saying all kinds of things that are nothing but contentious realities. What we're called to is love. And so just the simple example, when we come back together, our church in particular, because it's a really small space, is asking that everyone who comes to church wears the face mask. During most of the Mass, you have to take it off to receive communion, but then put it right back on. It's an act of love. It's one little thing that we're asked to do to protect others. If we say as Christians we're willing to love one another, that we're willing to be friends of the Lord, who himself taught us how to love, laying down our lives for one another, these little inconveniences for a time. And who knows how long this will last. It'll probably last longer than any of us want, but it's still going to be a short time in regard to eternity, in regard to the reality of love. We're called to begin our practice with an attitude that I'm going to do everything I can to protect those around me. And if it's one little thing that I don't like very much, I'm going to do it. We can be creative about it. There's some wonderful masks that people are making that say a little bit about who they are. They're a little bit creative. Then there's the basic ones which do the job, and that's fine too. Whatever we choose to do, we have to put into practice that reality of love. In particular today, the feast of St. Isidore the Farmer, we're meant to be aware and to be mindful of those who put food on our table. The reality is the farmers are in a terrible plight because of everything that's happened. Their experience of growing the harvest isn't going to be as easy this year as it might have been in some other years of plenty. We must give them the support that they need, and we must give them our gratitude. They're the ones who plant the seed, and then they, like us, wait upon God for the sun and the rain. They have some ways that they can work with that, and they do. But the reality is, it's all dependent on God, and it all comes from the love that God has for us. As we celebrate this Mass then, we look at the world that is full of contention. We look at the world that is full of people that is full of people who think differently from every other person. We look at a world, too, that is called to love. We hear the invitation of Jesus to accept his friendship, to put him absolutely first in our lives. And once we put him first, to love those whom he loves, which is everybody. To allow others who are beyond our understanding to be part of our world, to allow our own thoughts and our own ways of thinking to be subordinated to the higher call to love. There are times where we can be right, but silent. Jesus himself, when he spoke of truth to Pilate, ultimately went silent. He stood there as the truth. For us, the truth is love. If we lay down our lives for one another, we prove that we are friends of God, friends to each other, and we prove the power of love to bring to unity those whom God loves, so that the world may see how these Christians love one another, and therefore want to experience Jesus Christ, who teaches us how to love.